Money has a way of turning family dinners into battlefields. I learned this the hard way at my parents' mahogany table, watching my father's face as he delivered news that would shatter our carefully constructed world. Anderson Innovations is facing bankruptcy, he said, his voice steady despite the bomb he'd just dropped. The crystal glasses trembled as my mother Helen set down her wine too forcefully. I'm Chloe, and until that moment, I thought I understood the dynamics of wealth and power. I was wrong. My husband Ryan's hand tightened around his fork, knuckles white against the sterling silver. His mother Diane, sitting across from me, couldn't hide the flash of panic in her eyes. It was there and gone in an instant, replaced by something calculating that made my skin crawl. Surely there must be some mistake, Charles, Diane purred, leaning forward. Your company's stock has been soaring. Markets change, my father replied, cutting into his perfectly cooked steak. Technology is volatile. Sometimes empires fall. Ryan cleared his throat. Perhaps if we pooled our resources. There's nothing to pool, my father interrupted. The company's assets are frozen. Helen and I will need to downsize significantly. I watched my mother-in-law's face transform through a series of micro-expressions: shock, fear, anger, and finally, determination. She turned to me with eyes that reminded me of a predator sizing up wounded prey. Chloe, darling, surely your trust fund is tied to company stock, I cut in, the lie sliding easily off my tongue. Something in my gut had been warning me about Diane's intentions for months. Now I knew why. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Frank, my father-in-law, studied his plate with sudden intensity. He'd always been the quiet one, but tonight his silence spoke volumes. We're family, Ryan said finally, his voice strained. We'll figure something out. I turned to look at him, really look at him, and for the first time, I saw what I'd been refusing to see, the ambition burning behind his charm. The way his eyes darted between my father and his mother, calculating angles I couldn't yet see. Family, my father echoed, raising his glass. How fortunate we are to have such devoted relatives in times of crisis. The word devoted carried weight I couldn't quite decipher, but something in his tone made me sit straighter. I'd inherited more than just his green eyes. I had his instinct for reading people. And right now, every nerve ending was firing warnings. When did you first notice signs of trouble? Diane pressed, abandoning pretense. My father smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Trouble has a way of sneaking up on you, doesn't it? Rather like certain relationships. Ryan's hand found my knee under the table, squeezing too hard to be comforting. I resisted the urge to shake it off. We should discuss this privately, my mother interjected, ever the peacekeeper. Perhaps over coffee in the study. As chairs scraped back and tensions rose, I caught my father's eye. There was something there, a glimmer of satisfaction. Before I could analyze it further, Ryan was pulling me aside, his breath hot against my ear. We need to talk about this, he whispered urgently. About our future. I nodded, but my mind was already racing ahead, connecting dots I hadn't even known existed. The way Diane had been pushing Ryan to advance at his firm. The subtle digs about my simple lifestyle choices. The increasing pressure to attend social events where Ryan's mother paraded us around like prized show horses. As I watched them file into my father's study, Ryan's straight-back determination, Diane's predatory grace, Frank's defeated shuffle. One thought crystallized with perfect clarity. This dinner wasn't just about money. It was about unmasking truths that had been hiding in plain sight. And somehow, I knew this was only the beginning. The morning after my father's announcement, I found Ryan in our home office, hunched over spreadsheets I'd never seen before. The glow of his laptop cast shadows across his face, making him look older, harder somehow. You're up early, I said, lingering in the doorway. He didn't look up. Someone has to figure this out. Your father's company employs thousands of people. Did you know that? The accusation in his tone made my spine stiffen. Of course I know that. Then why aren't you more worried? His fingers drummed against the desk. We need to talk to your father about accessing your trust fund. No. Now he did look up, his charm slipping just enough to reveal something uglier underneath. This isn't the time for your independent woman routine, Chloe. Routine? The word tasted bitter. Is that what you think it is? My phone buzzed, a text from Megan asking to meet for coffee. I needed that escape more than ever. I have plans, I said, already turning away. With who? Your little friend from the bookstore? Ryan's chair scraped back. We have real problems to deal with. Mother's already called twice this morning. Of course she has. The words came out sharper than I intended. And what brilliant solution did Diane propose? Don't say her name like that. Like what? Like she's the enemy. He moved closer, reaching for my hand. She's trying to help us. I pulled away, remembering the predatory gleam in Diane's eyes at dinner. Is she, or is she trying to help herself? My phone buzzed again. Ryan glanced at it, his jaw tightening. Go ahead, run to Megan. But we're having this conversation when you get back. The coffee shop was busy, but Megan had claimed our usual corner table. One look at my face, and she pushed her untouched muffin toward me. That bad? I picked at the muffin's crust. Ryan's been making calls all morning, looking at financial records. It's like he's possessed. And Diane? Circling like a vulture. I met Megan's steady gaze. You were right about her, about everything. I never wanted to be right. She leaned forward. What aren't you telling me? Before I could answer, my mother's name flashed on my phone. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Darling. Helen's voice was tight with controlled panic. Are you alone? I'm with Megan. What's wrong? Diane just left here. She had proposals about the company, about your father stepping down early to make way for, she paused, for Ryan. The muffin turned to ash in my mouth. What? She suggested it would be best for everyone. A smooth transition, she called it. Keep it in the family. My laugh sounded hollow, even to my own ears. Ryan's been in corporate law for 3 years. He knows nothing about running a tech company. I don't think that matters to them, sweetheart. My mother's voice softened. There's something else. Your father, he seemed almost amused by the whole thing, like he was watching a play he'd already seen. The pieces started shifting in my mind, forming a different picture. I have to go. Megan caught my arm as I stood. Whatever you're thinking of doing, I'm not doing anything, I said. But we both knew it was a lie. I just need to understand what game everyone's playing. And when you do, I thought about Ryan's changed face in the morning light, about Diane's calculated concern, about my father's subtle smile at dinner. Then I'll decide if I want to keep playing at all. Walking home, my phone lit up with texts from Ryan. Mother's coming over for dinner. We need to present a united front. This is about our future, Chloe. Our future. I stopped walking, watching a couple argue silently through a restaurant window. Their gestures were familiar, his insistent, hers defensive. I wondered if they too were discovering that love wasn't enough when trust started crumbling. I typed back one word, fine, let them come. Let them show their hands. I had a feeling my father wasn't the only one testing loyalties, and maybe it was time I started my own game. I found the email by accident. Ryan had left his laptop open while taking a shower, and a notification popped up from Diane. Subject line, strategy meeting, Anderson takeover. My fingers moved before my conscience could catch up. 3 clicks later, I was staring at months of correspondence between my husband and his mother, plotting their ascent through my family's supposed downfall. We need to strike while the iron's hot, Diane had written just hours ago. Charles is vulnerable. If we can get Chloe to convince him about the trust fund. The shower stopped running. I kept reading, my hands shaking, as I scrolled through their calculated manipulation. Every dinner, every casual suggestion, every concerned phone call, all carefully orchestrated steps in their plan. What are you doing? I didn't jump at Ryan's voice. Something had gone cold inside me, like a switch being flipped. Reading about how you and your mother plan to use my father's crisis to your advantage. Very thorough notes, by the way. You had no right. To what? Discover how my husband's been conspiring behind my back. I turned to face him, still in his towel, water dripping onto our expensive hardwood floors. Or should I say my father's future CEO? His face did something complicated: shame, defiance, then that smooth mask I'd grown to hate. You don't understand business, Chloe. Sometimes opportunities. Opportunities? The laugh that escaped me didn't sound like my voice at all. Is that what I am to you? An opportunity? Don't be dramatic. He moved toward his closet, all casual confidence. Your father's company needs new leadership. Mother simply recognized. Your mother needs to stay the hell out of my family's business. I stood up, my whole body humming with rage. And you, God, I don't even know who you are anymore. I'm the same man you married. He started dressing, his movements precise and controlled. The same man who loves you, but love doesn't pay bills, does it? No, apparently it just finances hostile takeovers. His phone buzzed. Diane again, right on cue. Ryan glanced at it, then back at me. Mother's on her way over. We should discuss this as a family. Your mother is not my family. I grabbed my keys. And neither are you. Don't walk away from me. He caught my arm, gripped tight enough to leave marks. We need to handle this rationally. I looked down at his hand, then up at his face, like you've been handling everything, planning and plotting, while pretending to support me. I do support you. No, you support what I represent. My name, my connections, my trust fund. I yanked free. Tell me, was any of it real? Or was I just another stepping stone in Diane's grand plan? The silence stretched between us, filled with all the answers he couldn't give. His phone buzzed again, insistent. You should get that, I said quietly. Wouldn't want to keep your mother waiting. She might miss her chance to rehearse your lines. Chloe, please. For a moment, his mask cracked, showing real fear. Everything I did for us. No. I opened the door, pausing in the threshold. Everything you did for yourself. The difference is, now I know it. I was halfway down the driveway when Diane's Mercedes pulled up. She emerged like an actress taking stage, all concerned faces and outstretched arms. Darling, where are you going? We need to talk about. Save your performance. I cut her off. I read the emails. She froze, then recovered smoothly. Whatever you think you saw was exactly what I needed to see. I met her eyes, refusing to flinch. Congratulations, Diane. You raised a son just as manipulative as his mother. I drove straight to my parents' house, my mind racing faster than my car. All those careful plans, all those strategic moves, they'd underestimated one crucial factor. They weren't the only ones who could play games. My father was in his study when I arrived, looking unsurprised to see me. Rough morning? You could say that. I sat down across from him, studying his calm expression. Did you know? He smiled, and suddenly I understood where I'd inherited my capacity for strategy. Why don't you tell me what you've learned? And we'll go from there. 3 days of silence from Ryan felt like holding my breath underwater. I'd moved into my old bedroom at my parents' house, surrounded by remnants of a simpler life. Debate team trophies, dog-eared books, photos of a younger me who still believed in fairy tales. The doorbell rang just as I was boxing up my wedding photos. Mother's voice drifted up the stairs, followed by Frank's distinctive shuffling steps. Not the Mitchell I'd expected. I found them in the sitting room. Frank looking smaller than I remembered, his shoulders curved inward like he was bracing for impact. Chloe. He twisted his wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd noticed before. I came without Diane's knowledge. Mother touched my arm. I'll give you two some privacy. You don't have to. Yes, Frank interrupted softly. She does. Once we were alone, he pulled an envelope from his jacket. These are copies of documents you need to see. Bank statements, emails, records of meetings I wasn't supposed to know about. My hands trembled as I read. Diane hadn't just been planning a company takeover. She'd been systematically dismantling my marriage for years. Every career move Ryan made, every social connection, Every spontaneous decision had been orchestrated by his mother. Why are you showing me this? Frank's smile was tired. Because I've spent 35 years watching Diane destroy anything that threatens her ambitions. I won't watch her destroy you, too. And Ryan? Does he know about all this? Ryan, Frank's voice cracked. My son stopped being his own man the day he learned to value status over substance, just like I did. My phone buzzed, Ryan's name lighting up the screen. I declined the call. He's been trying to reach me, Frank continued. Diane's furious that you left. She's already planning damage control, spreading rumors about your mental state, suggesting you're having an episode. Of course she is. I laughed, but it sounded more like breaking glass. Can't have people thinking her perfect plan might fail. There's more. Frank leaned forward. The trust fund inquiry. It wasn't just about accessing your money. They found out about your father's patent-pending technology. Something about quantum encryption. The room tilted sideways. Dad's secret project. The one he'd been developing for years. The one that could revolutionize digital security. They're not after the company, I whispered. They're after the patent. Diane has buyers lined up, foreign investors. The company's supposed financial troubles were just their way in. Frank stood, looking older than his 60 years. I should have spoken up sooner, should have been stronger. Why now? Because last night, I heard them planning to have you declared mentally unfit to manage your affairs. Ryan would become your legal guardian, giving him control of your trust fund and your shares in Anderson Innovations. My stomach lurched. They can't do that. With the right doctors, right lawyers, right story. He shrugged. Diane's been building the narrative for months. Your erratic behavior, your paranoid accusations, your emotional instability. The front door opened, Mother returning with groceries. Frank moved toward the exit, then paused. I've already spoken to your father. Well, let's just say I'm not the only one who's been gathering evidence. After he left, I sat alone, staring at the documents until the words blurred. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Ryan. Please come home. We can fix this. I love you. 3 years of marriage. And I finally understood what those words really meant. I love what you can give me. I love what you represent. I love the power you provide. Mother found me still sitting there at sunset. She took one look at my face and poured 2 glasses of wine. You know, she said carefully, sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting back. Sometimes it's knowing when to walk away. I touched the documents Frank had brought, thinking of Ryan's text, of Diane's schemes, of everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. No, I said finally. Sometimes the bravest thing is fighting back exactly when they expect you to walk away. The charity gala sparkled with artificial warmth, crystal chandeliers, casting shadows over faces I'd known my whole life. I hadn't planned to come, but Father insisted. Keep your enemies closer, he'd said with that cryptic smile I was starting to understand. Diane held court near the champagne fountain, her red dress a splash of blood against the cream-colored walls. Ryan stood beside her, playing the dutiful son, though his eyes kept finding me across the room. Darling, Diane's voice carried over the murmur of conversation. We've missed you terribly, haven't we, Ryan? The crowd parted like water. I felt their stares, heard their whispers. Poor Chloe Anderson, having a breakdown. Such a shame about her family's troubles. Mother, Ryan stepped forward, reaching for my hand. I pulled back. Don't. The word came out sharper than I intended. Heads turned. Diane's smile never wavered. You're looking rested. The time away has clearly done you good. Though I do worry about you, alone in that big house with your parents, especially given their current situation. My parents are fine. Of course they are. She touched my arm, her fingers cold. But there's no shame in seeking help when one's mental health is suffering. Ryan's been beside himself with concern. The room tilted slightly, so this was her play, setting the stage, building her narrative. I caught Frank's eye across the room. He looked away. Actually, I said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear, I've been quite busy. Did you know Father's new encryption patent is generating quite a buzz? Several international buyers have expressed interest. Diane's fingers tightened on my arm. Patents? I wasn't aware Charles was still developing anything. Oh yes, revolutionary technology apparently. Though you'd know all about that, wouldn't you, given your recent meetings with certain investors? The color drained from her face. Behind her, Ryan went very still. I don't know what you're implying. No? I extracted myself from her grip. Funny, because I have emails suggesting otherwise. Would you like me to share them with the board members here tonight? You're obviously unwell, she said loudly. Ryan, darling, perhaps you should take your wife home before she embarrasses herself further. The only embarrassment, I replied, matching her volume, is how transparent your schemes have become. Tell me, does everyone here know you've been planning to have me declared mentally incompetent? Or was that supposed to be a surprise? The surrounding conversations died. Ryan stepped forward, panic breaking through his polished facade. Chloe, please. Please what? Keep quiet. Play my part? Be the good little wife, while you and your mother try to steal my father's company. That's enough. Diane's mask finally cracked. You ungrateful little... Ungrateful, I laughed, the sound echoing off crystal and marble. For what? The manipulation, the gaslighting, or the way you've turned my husband into your puppet? Well, how dare you? No, how dare you? I turned to the stunned crowd. My father's company isn't failing, but someone wanted you all to think it was. Someone who's been meeting with foreign investors, promising them technology that isn't hers to sell. Diane lunged forward, but Frank appeared suddenly, catching her arm. Don't, he said quietly. It's over. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at Ryan, saw the boy I'd fallen in love with, drowning in the man his mother had created. I filed for divorce this morning, I said softly. You can stop pretending now. As I walked away, Diane's voice chased me. You'll regret this. When you're alone with nothing but your pride, better alone with my pride, I called over my shoulder, than trapped in your web of lies. Outside, the night air hit like a slap. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. Mother was waiting in the car, exactly as planned. Did you get it? I asked. She held up her phone, showing the video she'd recorded through the window. Every word. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Tomorrow the board would receive copies of everything. The emails, the recordings, the proof of Diane's betrayal. But tonight, I'd savor the look on her face when she realized her carefully constructed world was about to crumble. Sometimes revenge doesn't need to be cold. Sometimes it just needs to be true. The morning after the gala, I found my father in his study, calmly watching news coverage of Anderson Innovations' stock price soaring. My public revelation of the encryption patent had sent the market into a frenzy. You knew, I said, not bothering with pleasantries. You knew about Diane's plans all along. He turned off the television. I suspected. The financial crisis was a test. One that revealed exactly what I needed to see. A test. The word tasted bitter. You used me as bait. I protected the company. What about protecting me? My voice cracked. Do you have any idea what they were planning to do? They were going to have me declared incompetent, take everything, which is exactly why I needed proof. He stood, pulling a file from his desk. Every move they made, every meeting, every phone call, all documented. But we needed them to show their hand completely. The implications hit me like a physical blow. You let me marry him knowing he might be part of this? I let you make your own choice. His expression softened slightly, though I hoped you'd see through him sooner. A knock interrupted us. Mother entered, her face pale. They're here. Who's here? Ryan and his lawyers. She touched my arm. And Dr. Phillips, the psychiatrist. My stomach dropped. They're actually going through with it. They filed the competency hearing papers this morning, Father said quietly, before the stock market opened. The room started spinning. Even after everything, the confrontation, the evidence, the public humiliation, They were still trying to take control. Let them in. Chloe. Let them in. Ryan entered first, looking polished and concerned. The perfect worried husband. Two lawyers followed, then Dr. Phillips, and finally Diane, wearing victory like expensive perfume. "This is for your own good," Ryan said softly. "You're not well, sweetheart. The scene you caused last night was the truth." I met his gaze steadily. Every word. "You accused your mother-in-law of corporate espionage in front of half of Boston's elite." Dr. Phillips made a note on his pad, along with paranoid delusions about foreign investors and patent theft. Interesting choice of words, Father interrupted, considering the meeting Diane had last week with certain Chinese technology firms. Diane's smile flickered. "I don't know what you're implying." "No implications." He opened the file on his desk. "Just facts, dates, recordings. Enough evidence to interest not just the board, but the FBI." The lawyers exchanged glances. Dr. Phillips cleared his throat. "Nevertheless, Miss Anderson's erratic behavior." "Mrs. Mitchell," Ryan corrected automatically. "Not for long." I pulled out my own file. Divorce papers, already signed. "Your plan might have worked if you'd been smarter, or if I'd been weaker." "You can't prove anything," Diane snapped, mask finally cracking. "Actually," Frank's voice came from the doorway, making everyone turn. "She can, and I'm here to make sure she does." He walked in slowly, placing a USB drive on Father's desk. "Everything, Charles. Every meeting, every plan, every conversation. I may have been a coward in my marriage, but I won't let you destroy my son's soul like you destroyed mine." Ryan stared at his father, color draining from his face. "Dad, I'm sorry, son." Frank's voice was gentle. "But this has to end." The next few minutes blurred, lawyers muttering urgently, Dr. Phillips making excuses to leave, Diane's carefully constructed facade crumbling into desperate threats. But I couldn't look away from Ryan's face as he finally understood. He'd lost everything by trying to take what was never his. "The competency hearing is canceled," one lawyer announced, "given the circumstances." "And the divorce?" I asked. "Will be uncontested." He glanced at Ryan. "Unless—" "No," Ryan said quietly. "No contest." They filed out slowly, leaving only the heavy silence of endings. Father touched my shoulder. "It's over." But it wasn't. Not really. Because now I had to face the hardest truth. Everyone I'd trusted had been playing their own game. Even my own father. Was any of it real? I asked the empty room. Or were we all just pieces on someone else's board? No one answered. Maybe that was an answer in itself. The Anderson Innovations Board meeting room felt like a courtroom, with 12 pairs of eyes watching me take my seat. Ryan and Diane sat opposite, their lawyers flanking them like guards. Father occupied his usual place at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. "Before we begin," Diane's lawyer started, "my clients would like to propose a settlement." "No." I placed a single USB drive on the polished table. "No more deals. No more negotiations. Today we're going to watch something interesting." Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "Chloe, please." "Computer's ready, Miss Anderson," the tech assistant announced. The lights dimmed. On the massive screen, Diane appeared in crystal-clear resolution, meeting with foreign investors in a hotel room I recognized from last month. "The encryption technology will be yours," screen Diane promised, "once we secure control of the company." "Turn it off," Diane snapped, half rising. "Why?" I kept my voice steady. "This is my favorite part, where you explain how you'll have me declared mentally unfit to access my shares." The board members murmured. Ryan's lawyer whispered something urgent in his ear. "You've edited this," Diane accused. "This is another example of her instability." "The footage is authenticated," Father interrupted, "as are the financial records, showing attempted wire transfers to offshore accounts." Ryan's face had gone ashen. "Mother? Oh, don't act surprised." My laugh felt like broken glass. "You were there for some of these meetings. Remember Singapore?" When you held my hand at dinner while your mother sold my family's legacy behind my back. I never meant to get caught? I stood slowly. That's the problem with people like you and your mother, Ryan. You're so focused on what you want to take, you never notice what you're losing. Enough. Diane's mask finally cracked. You spoiled little girl. You have no idea what it takes to build something, to climb, to steal, I challenged, to manipulate, to destroy your own son's soul, just to satisfy your ambition. Everything I did was for him. No. Frank's voice came from the doorway. I hadn't even heard him enter. Everything you did was for yourself, and I have the proof. He walked to the table, placing another drive next to mine. 35 years of evidence. Every scheme, every manipulation, every destroyed life you left in your wake, including what you did to the Harrismans last year. The color drained from Diane's face. Several board members leaned forward, suddenly alert. Frank, she whispered, you wouldn't. I already have. He turned to the board. I've submitted everything to the SEC. They're very interested in certain real estate transactions from 2019. Ryan stood abruptly. Dad, what are you doing? Choosing truth over power. Try it sometime, son. The next few minutes dissolved into chaos. Lawyers huddling, board members making calls, Diane's carefully constructed world crumbling in real time. The board will need to deliberate, the chairman announced finally, but given the evidence, you can't do this, Diane interrupted. I'll release everything, every dirty secret, every skeleton. Go ahead. I met her desperate gaze. Unlike you, I'm not afraid of the truth anymore. She lunged across the table, papers flying. Security moved quickly, but not before she grabbed my arm, her nails drawing blood. I made you, she hissed. Without my son, you're nothing. I didn't pull away. Instead, I leaned closer, speaking softly enough that only she could hear. No, Diane, you didn't make me. You revealed me, and that's your biggest mistake. As security led them out, Ryan looked back once. For a moment, I saw the man I'd fallen in love with. Lost, broken, but finally free from his mother's shadow. I'm sorry, he mouthed. I nodded, but didn't speak. Some apologies come too late to matter. Father touched my shoulder. The board will vote to press charges. Good. I gathered my things, suddenly exhausted. But that's not why I did this. Then why? I thought about Diane's words. I made you. Because sometimes, I said quietly, the only way to unmake someone else's version of you is to show them who you really are. The truth, it turns out, is the sweetest revenge of all. The divorce papers felt lighter than I expected, maybe because I'd already done the heavy lifting, carrying other people's expectations, shouldering their ambitions, bearing the weight of false love. Megan poured coffee as I signed the final page. My kitchen, once filled with Ryan's expensive gadgets, now held only what I truly needed. Have you seen the news? She asked, sliding her phone across the table. Diane Mitchell faces federal charges, the headline declared. Below it, a smaller story. Frank Mitchell files for divorce. Good for Frank, I said, meaning it. Better late than never. My phone buzzed. Ryan's number. I declined the call, just as I had the last dozen. Some conversations weren't worth having anymore. Your father called, Mother said, entering with a stack of mail. The board approved the new security protocols. The encryption patent is safe. And the company? Stronger than ever. She hesitated. Ryan's law firm dropped him. Apparently, attempted corporate espionage isn't good for business. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I felt something closer to peace. The quiet kind that comes after a storm. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Frank, standing on the porch, looking older but somehow lighter. I'm not staying, he said when I opened the door. I just wanted you to have this. He handed me a small box. Inside lay a familiar pearl necklace, the one Diane had worn to every important event, her symbol of achieved status. She threw it at me during the divorce discussion, Frank explained. said it represented everything she'd sacrificed for our family. But we both know she never sacrificed anything. She only took. Frank, let me finish. He straightened his shoulders. I'm moving to Maine. Bought a small bookstore up there. Always wanted to run one, before Diane convinced me it wasn't ambitious enough. I touched the pearls, feeling their smooth surface. Why give these to me? Because you showed me something I'd forgotten. That real strength isn't about taking what you want. It's about standing firm in who you are. After he left, I sat on the porch steps, watching the autumn leaves dance across the lawn. Mother joined me, her shoulder touching mine. What will you do with them? She asked, nodding at the pearls. I thought about Diane, about how desperately she'd chased symbols of success, turning her son into a reflection of her own ambitions. There's a women's shelter downtown, I said. They help people rebuild their lives. Maybe these can fund someone else's fresh start. Mother smiled, understanding what I wasn't saying. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about transforming their weapons into something better. Inside, Megan was clearing the coffee cups. Ready for dinner, that new bistro opened downtown. Actually, I interrupted. I thought we could cook here, something simple. She paused, then grinned. Like those terrible pancakes we used to make in college? Exactly like that. As we gathered ingredients, I caught my reflection in the window. No designer clothes, no careful makeup, no pretense. Just me, finally comfortable in my own skin. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Ryan. I never deserved you. I deleted it without responding. He was right. But that wasn't the point anymore. The point was that I'd finally learned to deserve myself. You're smiling, Megan observed, measuring flour with cheerful imprecision. Because I just realized something. I cracked an egg, letting the shell fall away, clean and complete. All this time, I thought I was fighting to save my family's company, or my marriage, or even my dignity. But really, I was fighting to save myself, and I did. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the kitchen in shades of gold. Somewhere across town, Diane was facing the consequences of her actions. Somewhere in Maine, Frank was starting over. And here, in this kitchen that was finally truly mine, I was doing what I should have done years ago, living life on my own terms, making a mess, and not apologizing for any of it.